The October rain arrived early in Seattle, washing silver streaks across the windows of the two-story townhouse Noah Whitmore had once imagined growing old in. The living room echoed. Not because it was empty not yet but because silence had slowly replaced the conversations that used to fill it. Half the bookshelves were bare. Cardboard boxes stood neatly stacked beside the front door, each labeled in Noah's tidy handwriting. Books. Kitchen. Office. Boston. He paused before sealing another box. Inside lay framed photographs from happier years, weekends hiking Mount Rainier, laughing on a ferry crossing Elliott Bay, celebrating anniversaries beneath strings of lights in small downtown restaurants. Every picture captured two smiling people. Looking at them now, Noah couldn't remember exactly when those smiles had stopped belonging to reality. Upstairs, a shower was running. Emily was getting ready for work. She had become busier over the last year. More client dinners. More late meetings. More business trips. At first Noah had admired her ambition. Then he had accepted it. Eventually, he had simply stopped asking. Not because he no longer cared. Because every question seemed to annoy her. The bathroom door opened. Emily stepped into the hallway wearing a charcoal business suit, fastening an earring while checking emails on her phone. "You've packed a lot," she said casually. Noah smiled without looking up. "I figured it'd be easier if I finished today." She nodded. "Right." That single word carried more distance than an argument ever could. She walked downstairs. The smell of expensive perfume followed her. Months ago Noah would have wrapped his arms around her waist before she left. Now neither of them reached across the invisible line that had grown between them. Emily poured coffee into a travel mug. "You'll leave Friday." "Early morning." "Okay." Another silence. Neither knew what belonged inside it anymore. Noah watched her scrolling through her phone. She smiled briefly at something on the screen. Not at him. Her phone vibrated again. The contact simply read, "Richard H." She turned the display away almost instinctively. "I have to go. Long day." "Probably." She grabbed her coat. At the door she hesitated for barely a second. "Drive safely if you go anywhere." "You too." The front door closed. The house returned to stillness. Across downtown Seattle, Emily entered the sleek glass headquarters of Hawthorne Media Group. She wasn't late. She never was. The elevator opened onto the executive floor. Richard Holloway stood outside the conference room, sleeves rolled to his forearms, smiling with effortless confidence. "There she is." Emily smiled despite herself. "You texted too much this morning. I missed you." "You saw me yesterday." "That was yesterday." He leaned closer. "Noah still packing?" Emily nodded quietly. "He leaves Friday." Richard's smile widened almost imperceptibly. "So everything's finally working out." She looked around the hallway. Employees walked past carrying laptops and coffees. No one paid attention. Still. She stepped away. "We're at work." Richard laughed softly. "You worry too much." "I have reasons." "You won't in a week." He squeezed her hand before entering the meeting room. Emily stood frozen for a moment. She remembered the first time he'd complimented her presentation nearly 8 months earlier. The first private lunch. The first lingering touch. The first lie she told Noah about working late. Each step had seemed harmless. Each decision temporary. Now she no longer knew how to find the path back. Meanwhile, Noah drove across town toward his own office for what would be one of his final weeks. Unlike Emily, he hadn't told many people about Boston. His resignation had surprised nearly everyone. "You sure about this?" asked his longtime colleague Marcus during lunch. "You've built your whole career here." Noah smiled. "Maybe that's exactly why it's time." Marcus studied him. "This isn't only about work." Noah looked out the cafe window. Seattle traffic crawled through the rain. "No. You and Emily. We've drifted." Marcus seethed. "I always thought you two would figure it out." "So did I." Noah wasn't lying. He still believed marriages failed quietly long before they officially ended. There wasn't always one dramatic moment. Sometimes people simply became strangers sharing a mortgage. That evening Emily didn't come home until after 10. Chinese takeout sat untouched on the kitchen counter. Noah had left a note. "Dinner's in the oven if you're hungry." She stared at it longer than expected. Guilt settled heavily in her chest. She walked upstairs. Noah was asleep. Or pretending to be. She couldn't tell anymore. She changed into pajamas and slipped beneath the blankets, careful not to touch him. In the darkness she whispered almost silently, "I'm sorry." She wasn't sure whether she meant the affair. Or the woman she'd become. Beside her, Noah kept his eyes closed. He heard every word. But neither of them spoke again. Outside, rain continued tapping softly against the bedroom window. Neither realized that the quiet they feared had already become the loudest warning their marriage would ever receive. The first week of November arrived with crisp air, fading leaves, and the illusion that some endings could still be postponed. Seattle wore autumn beautifully. People hurried beneath umbrellas, coffee shops overflowed with remote workers, and downtown skyscrapers reflected gray clouds like polished mirrors. From the outside, everything looked perfectly ordinary. Inside two different hearts, however, nothing was ordinary anymore. Emily had once believed lying would become easier with practice. Instead, every lie demanded another. And another. By Monday morning, she could no longer remember which version of the truth she had told Noah. "I'm having dinner with the client. The marketing team has another presentation. We're preparing for next quarter." Every sentence sounded believable because pieces of it were true. There were dinners. There were presentations. There were meetings. Richard simply happened to be waiting after all of them. Their favorite place had become a boutique hotel overlooking Elliott Bay. It wasn't flashy enough to attract attention. Just elegant enough for successful professionals to disappear into the crowd. Richard unlocked the suite and tossed his keycard onto the table. "I've been thinking." Emily placed her purse on the chair. "That usually means trouble." He laughed. "I finally convinced the board to create a new regional director position." She looked up. "What? I want you in it." Emily frowned. "I've only been managing one division. You've been carrying 3 divisions. That doesn't mean they'll promote me. They'll listen to me." He walked closer. "They always do." Emily smiled despite herself. "You make everything sound simple." "It is simple." He gently brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "The company needs talented people." She searched his face. "And what if they think you're favoring me?" "They won't." His answer came too quickly. Too confidently. Richard had always possessed that gift. He never answered difficult questions. He erased them. For a little while, Emily allowed herself to imagine the future he painted. A larger office. A 6-figure raise. Business class flights. Industry conferences in New York. A luxury condominium overlooking the water. No more worrying about mortgages. No more wondering whether Noah's career decisions would force compromises on hers. Richard made ambition sound romantic. He made success feel intimate. Most dangerously, he made her believe she deserved both. Across town, Noah spent another evening surrounded by cardboard boxes. Every object seemed attached to a memory. A ceramic mug Emily had painted during a couple's pottery class. Concert tickets tucked inside an old novel. A faded receipt from their honeymoon road trip along the Oregon coast. He smiled sadly. We really were happy. There had been a time when Emily laughed so hard she snorted. A time when she insisted on dancing barefoot in the kitchen while dinner burned. A time when she reached for his hand without thinking. People didn't notice the last happy day. Only the first lonely one. His phone buzzed. "Marcus. Still alive." "Barely. You need help packing." "I'm almost done." There was a pause. "You sound tired." "I am." Marcus hesitated. "Can I ask something?" "Shoot. When's the last time you and Emily actually had a date?" Noah thought. A real date. No phones. No deadlines. No rushing home. "I honestly don't remember." "Damn. I kept thinking work would calm down. For both of you. It never did." Marcus seethed. "My wife almost left me 5 years ago. You've mentioned that. You know what saved us?" "What?" "I finally stopped assuming she'd always be there." The sentence lingered after the call ended. Noah stared at the unopened moving boxes. Had he taken Emily for granted? Maybe. He replayed years of 12-hour workdays. Cancelled vacations. Weekend coding projects. Anniversaries interrupted by conference calls. Maybe loneliness had entered their marriage long before either of them noticed. Maybe he had simply failed her. The thought hurt, because it felt possible. Emily arrived home just after 9. She found Noah repairing the loose hinge on a kitchen cabinet. You didn't have to fix that. He shrugged. The next owners shouldn't inherit broken things. The words landed strangely. Broken things. Emily watched him tighten one final screw before closing the cabinet gently. It shut perfectly. Unlike their marriage. How was work? Busy. Everything okay? Just preparing for a promotion. His face brightened. Really? She nodded. It isn't official. I'm proud of you. His smile was immediate. Completely sincere. No jealousy. No suspicion. Only pride. Emily felt something tighten painfully inside her chest. You are. Of course. She looked away. I thought you'd be upset. Why would I? You've always made more money than me. So. She laughed awkwardly. I don't know. Noah wiped his hands on a towel. If you become the boss someday. He smiled. I'll probably brag about it to everyone. Emily couldn't answer. She suddenly hated herself. The next afternoon, Richard invited her to lunch. Not at the office cafeteria. At an upscale rooftop restaurant overlooking the harbor. You look distracted, he observed. I didn't sleep much. Thinking about Noah? Emily remained silent. Richard leaned back. You're feeling guilty again. I was married before I met you. I know. It ended badly. So don't repeat the mistake. Richard shook his head. This isn't the same. It feels the same. No. He reached across the table. This is two adults finding happiness. She wanted to believe him. She truly did. But the sentence echoed strangely. Finding happiness. Or borrowing it from someone else. Later that week, the company hosted a networking gala at the Seattle Art Museum. Emily wore a navy evening dress Noah had bought for her birthday nearly 2 years earlier. He noticed immediately. You still have that. She smiled softly. It still fits. You look beautiful. There wasn't even a hint of exaggeration in his voice. Only admiration. She almost cancelled the event. Almost. Instead, she kissed his cheek. I'll try not to stay too late. I'll leave the porch light on. The gala sparkled with champagne glasses, live jazz, polished marble floors, and conversations about branding strategies and quarterly profits. Richard found her within minutes. You came. I said I would. He handed her a drink. Across the room, photographers snapped pictures of executives laughing together. Richard lowered his voice. Stand closer. Someone will notice. They'll assume we're discussing business. He placed a hand lightly against the small of her back. For only a moment. Yet Emily felt every nerve in her body awaken. At the opposite end of the ballroom, Vice President Linda Monroe watched them. Only briefly. Only enough to notice. Then she looked away. Richard never saw her. Emily did. A tiny seed of fear rooted itself inside her. Near midnight Emily finally returned home. The house was dark except for one lamp in the living room. Noah had fallen asleep on the couch. A travel guide to Boston rested open on his chest. Beside it sat 2 mugs of hot chocolate. One untouched. One cold. Emily quietly picked up the second mug. She could tell from the thin layer of milk on top that he had made it hours earlier. He had expected her. Waited for her. Eventually fallen asleep. She sat in the armchair across from him. For several minutes she simply watched the man she had once believed she would love forever. His face looked more tired than it had a year ago. A few more silver hairs had appeared near his temples. One hand still rested on the travel book. A page was folded over. She glanced at it. Best weekend trips for couples near Boston. Coupe. He had still been planning for them. Even while preparing to leave Seattle. Even while believing distance not betrayal had damaged their marriage. Emily covered her mouth before a sob escaped. What am I doing? Her whisper disappeared into the silent room. Noah stirred slightly but didn't wake. She reached toward him instinctively, wanting to brush the hair from his forehead the way she used to. Her fingers stopped inches away. She no longer believed she had the right. Instead, she quietly carried both mugs into the kitchen. She washed them. Turned off the light. And climbed the stairs alone. In the darkness of the bedroom, she lay awake beside the man who still blamed himself for a loneliness she had already filled with someone else. Outside, the rain began falling again. Soft. Steady. Patient. Like the truth, waiting for the perfect moment to be heard. Friday arrived without ceremony. No thunder. No dramatic sunrise. Only the pale gray light of another Seattle morning slipping through half-empty rooms that no longer felt like home. Noah woke before dawn. For a few moments he simply lay still, listening. The refrigerator hummed downstairs. Rain tapped softly against the bedroom window. Beside him, Emily slept on her side, facing away from him. There had been a time when she curled into his chest before sunrise, stealing the blankets and apologizing with sleepy laughter. Now an entire universe seemed to exist between their backs. He looked at her one last time. Not with anger. With grief. Then he quietly got out of bed. The moving truck arrived at 7. 2 movers carried furniture through the front door while Noah checked inventory with calm efficiency. Boxes disappeared one by one. Books. Kitchenware. Office equipment. Winter clothes. Every empty corner echoed louder than the last. Emily came downstairs wearing jeans and a cream sweater instead of business clothes. "You didn't have to leave this early," she said. "I wanted to beat traffic." She wrapped both hands around a coffee mug. "I can help. You've got work. I could call in." Noah smiled gently. "It's okay." She searched his face. "You don't seem nervous." "I've had months to prepare." She nodded. "So have I," she whispered. He didn't ask what she meant. By mid-morning only the bedroom remained. Noah folded the last of his shirts with the same careful precision he used for everything else in life. When he reached for the garment bag hanging in the closet, something slipped from one of Emily's jackets. A folded receipt. It landed face up on the hardwood floor. He bent down automatically. Harbor View Suites. 2 nights. Executive Suite. Tuesday. Checkout, 8:12 a.m. His eyes lingered. Tuesday. Emily had told him she was attending an overnight marketing retreat. He stood motionless. Perhaps there was an explanation. Perhaps. He folded the receipt once and placed it back inside the jacket exactly where he had found it. No accusations. Not yet. As he continued packing, he noticed another detail. A navy dress shirt hanging behind Emily's winter coat. Not his. He recognized every shirt he owned. This one was slimmer. More expensive. The cuffs embroidered with the initials. R.H. Noah stared for several seconds. Someone else's cologne still clung faintly to the fabric. Warm cedar. Bergamot. Something darker beneath it. It was unfamiliar. Yet unmistakably masculine. The scent lingered in the quiet closet like a confession no one intended to make. His fingers tightened around the hanger. Then slowly relaxed. He placed the shirt back exactly where it had been. Closed the closet door. And continued packing. Downstairs, one of the movers called out. "Mr. Whitmore. I'm coming." Life had a strange way of demanding ordinary tasks in extraordinary moments. A couch needed loading. Paperwork needed signing. Coffee needed refilling. Heartbreak politely waited its turn. Around noon Emily left for what she described as a quick office meeting. "I'll be back before you leave." "No rush. I don't want to miss saying goodbye." "You won't." She hesitated. For one impossible second Noah thought she might tell him everything. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed his cheek. "I'll see you soon." The front door closed. He watched her drive away through the front window. Then returned upstairs. The house had become almost empty. Only one bedside table remained. As Noah unplugged the lamp, Emily's phone charger slipped behind it. He picked it up. Her old smartwatch, forgotten beneath the table, suddenly lit up. Not because he touched it. Because a call was coming through. Richard Hay. The watch vibrated across the floor. Over and over. Then the screen displayed a preview as voicemail activated. Richard's voice echoed faintly through the tiny speaker. "Emily, call me as soon as you can. Last night was incredible, but don't forget to delete the hotel confirmation. I'd rather your husband never finds out before he leaves." Silence. The voicemail ended. Noah remained standing exactly where he was. He didn't replay it. He didn't need to. Every unanswered question of the past year suddenly found its answer. Every late meeting. Every cancelled dinner. Every distracted smile at her phone. Every unexplained absence. Not distance. Not exhaustion. Not bad timing. Betrayal. It arrived without shouting. Without broken glass. Without dramatic music. Just a stranger's voice filling an empty bedroom. Noah sat on the edge of the mattress. His hands rested quietly on his knees. He expected rage. Instead, he felt something far heavier. The collapse of certainty. His marriage had not slowly faded away. It had been abandoned long before he realized he was standing there alone. He lowered his head. A single tear landed on the hardwood floor. Then another. No sobs. No screams. Just grief unfolding in complete silence. Nearly 20 minutes passed before he stood again. He wiped his face. Walked into the bathroom. Splashed cold water across his eyes. Looked at his reflection. You still have a choice. His voice sounded unfamiliar. He could call Emily. Call Richard. Call everyone. Expose them. Demand explanations. Demand justice. But every imagined confrontation ended the same way. Excuse. Lease. Blame. None of them would restore what had already died. He reached into the moving box marked office and removed a single sheet of stationery. Then he sat at the kitchen island. For a long time, he simply stared at the blank page. Finally, he began to write. Emily, if you're reading this, then I've already left. I discovered enough today to understand what neither of us has had the courage to say aloud. The hardest part isn't knowing you've loved someone else. The hardest part is realizing I've been trying to save a marriage that only one of us was still carrying. I won't ask for explanations. I won't compete with promises someone else made you. Love that has to fight for honesty has already lost. For months I believed our distance was my fault. I replayed every late night at work, every cancelled vacation, every moment I wasn't present enough. Maybe I made mistakes. I'm sure I did. But my mistakes never included choosing someone else while you were still my wife. I hope whatever future you've chosen brings you the happiness you've been searching for. I truly mean that. Carrying hatred would only make me lose what's left of myself. Please don't spend years wondering whether I could have forgiven you. The better question is whether either of us could ever rebuild what trust once was. Take care of yourself. Goodbye, Emily. Noah. He folded the letter carefully, placed it on the kitchen counter beneath the ceramic mug she had painted years ago. The mug that read, "Home is wherever we are together." The irony almost made him laugh. Almost. At 2 o'clock the moving truck pulled away from the curb. Noah climbed into his SUV. Before starting the engine, he looked once more at the townhouse. The porch where they drank coffee on Sunday mornings. The upstairs window where Emily used to wave as he left for work. The maple tree they planted during their first spring in the neighborhood. Places remember people longer than people remember promises. He whispered softly. Thank you. Not to Emily. To the life they had once shared. Then he started the engine. An hour later, Emily hurried into the driveway. She had left work early. For reasons she couldn't fully explain, anxiety had followed her all afternoon. The moving truck was gone. Noah's car was gone. The house felt impossibly still. She opened the front door. Noah. No answer. Only empty rooms. And sunlight stretching across bare wooden floors. Then she saw it. A folded letter resting beneath the painted mug. Her hands trembled before she even opened it. By the time she reached the final line. Goodbye, Emily. Her knees gave way. She collapsed onto the kitchen floor. Not because Noah had left. She had always known he would. She collapsed because, for the first time, she understood something far more devastating. He knew. He knew everything. And he had chosen silence. No accusations. No revenge. No desperate pleas for her to stay. Only dignity. Only goodbye. Emily pressed the letter against her chest and began to cry with a grief deeper than fear. Because some doors do not slam shut. They close so gently that by the time you realize they're locked forever, the person on the other side is already gone. 3 days after Noah left Seattle, the townhouse no longer felt like a home. It felt like evidence. Every room carried the outline of something that had once existed. The living room where movie nights had stretched past midnight. The kitchen where they argued over recipes and laughed over burnt pancakes. The bedroom where promises had been whispered beneath winter blankets. Now every sound echoed. Emily had never realized how much noise one person made simply by existing. She wandered from room to room carrying Noah's letter in the pocket of her cardigan. She had read it so many times the folds had already begun to soften. There were no insults. No accusations. No dramatic declarations that she had ruined his life. That was what unsettled her most. Noah had given her something she did not deserve. Grace. And grace, she was discovering, could weigh far more heavily than anger. Monday morning arrived. Emily stood before the bathroom mirror, carefully applying makeup to hide another sleepless night. "You look terrible," she whispered to her reflection. The woman staring back looked older than she remembered. Not because of wrinkles. Because guilt had a way of exhausting the face before it touched the soul. Her phone buzzed. "Richard." She answered after several rings. "Hey. You've been avoiding me." "I've been busy." "You mean Noah leaving?" Emily closed her eyes. "He knows." Silence. "What?" "He never confronted me." "Are you sure?" "He left me a letter." Richard exhaled slowly. "So that's it?" "What do you mean?" "He moved." "Yes. Then maybe it's for the best." Emily frowned. "For the best? You said your marriage had been over for months." It wasn't. She stopped herself. Richard noticed. It wasn't what? She couldn't answer. Because somewhere between the affair and Noah's goodbye, she had realized something terrifying. A marriage wasn't over simply because people became lonely. Sometimes it ended because one person quietly stopped protecting it. And that person had been her. Richard insisted they meet after work. Their usual hotel suddenly felt inappropriate. Instead, they chose a quiet wine bar overlooking Lake Union. Richard arrived 20 minutes late. No apology. He loosened his tie as he sat down. "Crazy day." Emily forced a smile. "I almost cancelled." "I figured." He ordered a glass of Cabernet without asking what she wanted. Months ago she wouldn't have noticed. Now she did. He spent most of dinner checking emails. Twice, he answered work calls. When Emily tried to talk about Noah's letter, Richard interrupted. "You can't keep punishing yourself." "I'm not trying to." "Then stop living in the past." She looked at him carefully. "Did you ever think about what this would do to him?" Richard shrugged. "He was leaving anyway." "That's not the point." "It kind of is." She stared. "He wasn't cruel. He simply wasn't grieving." There was a difference. For Richard, Noah had always been an obstacle. For Emily, Noah had been a husband. The distinction suddenly felt enormous. 2,000 miles away, Boston greeted Noah with clear skies and cold Atlantic air. His apartment overlooked the Charles River. Not luxurious. Not temporary. Just peaceful. The first morning he stood on the balcony watching rowers cut through the water before sunrise. For the first time in months, he noticed something strange. His chest didn't feel tight. The pain remained. But the constant pressure was gone. His phone rang. "Welcome to Boston," Marcus laughed. "You surviving?" "So far." "You unpacked?" "Halfway." "And emotionally?" Noah smiled faintly. "Ask me again in 6 months." Marcus hesitated. "I heard people back here are surprised." "About what?" "Your new title." Noah looked out across the river. "I figured. You really kept this secret." "I had to." Marcus chuckled. "Vice President of Product Strategy. It still sounds strange. You undersold yourself." "I wasn't trying to impress anyone." "You've been negotiating with Apex Dynamics for almost a year." "I know." "And Emily never knew." Noah was quiet. "No." "Why?" "Because every time I wanted to tell her." He remembered the late meetings. The distracted dinners. The evenings she barely looked up from her phone. She wasn't really there. News traveled quickly in Seattle's technology community. By Wednesday afternoon, Emily's coworker Melissa hurried into her office carrying a tablet. "Have you seen this?" "What?" Melissa placed the screen on the desk. A business magazine headline filled the display. Apex Dynamics appoints Noah Whitmore as Vice President of Product Strategy. Below the headline was a professional photograph Noah had taken months earlier. He looked confident. Calm. Different. Emily blinked. "What? You know him, right?" Melissa smiled. "I forgot your husband works in tech too." "Worked." The word caught Emily's attention immediately. She read the article. Noah had not accepted an ordinary job. He had joined one of the fastest-growing artificial intelligence companies in North America. Industry analysts described Apex Dynamics as one of the most influential firms of the decade. The article mentioned that Noah had spent nearly 11 months advising the executive board before formally accepting the position. 11 months. Emily read that sentence again. Then again. 11 months. Almost the exact length of her affair. Her breathing became shallow. That meant while she had been sneaking away to hotels, Noah had quietly been building an entirely new future. He had carried that dream alone. Not because he wanted secrecy. Because somewhere along the way, she had stopped becoming someone he could share dreams with. She opened their old message thread. Hundreds of conversations. Most of the recent ones looked painfully one-sided. Noah, guess what happened today? No response for 6 hours. Emily, sorry. BC Day. Another message. Noah, maybe we should celebrate this weekend. Emily, can't. Client dinner. She scrolled farther. A photograph Noah had sent months earlier. A snowy street in Boston during one of his interviews. Wish you were here. I think you'd love this city. She had replied with nothing more than a heart emoji. She couldn't even remember why she hadn't called him that night. She remembered where she actually was. Richard's hotel room. Emily lowered the phone onto her desk. A wave of nausea rolled through her. That evening she drove to Richard's condominium. He answered wearing gym clothes. I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk. He stepped aside. Sure. She walked in. The apartment was immaculate. Minimalist furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything looked expensive. Nothing looked lived in. She placed the business article on the kitchen counter. You knew. Richard glanced at the headline. So he landed at Apex. You knew he was interviewing. I'd heard rumors. You never told me. He shrugged. I didn't think it mattered. Emily laughed bitterly. It mattered to me. Why? Because he was planning a future. Richard folded his arms. A future without you. You don't know that. Emily. His voice became firmer. He accepted that offer months ago. He still wanted us to move. He probably changed his mind. You don't know that. Richard sighed impatiently. What exactly are you looking for? I don't know. Closure. She remained silent. He continued. You chose me. I know. So why are we talking about him? Because he never stopped believing in us. The answer stayed inside her. She couldn't bring herself to say it aloud. Late that night, Emily returned to the empty townhouse. She wandered into Noah's old home office. Only one thing remained inside. A small pushpin map of the United States. Boston had been marked with a blue pin. Seattle with a red one. A thin line connected them. Taped beside the map was a handwritten note in Noah's familiar script. Maybe a new city can help us find each other again. No date. No explanation. Just hope. Simple. Quiet. Patient hope. Emily covered her mouth as tears blurred the words. He had been planning not an escape, but a beginning. He had imagined them walking unfamiliar streets together. Finding new favorite restaurants. Building another chapter. While he researched neighborhoods, she had been making hotel reservations with another man. She slowly sank into Noah's old office chair. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows. Inside, the silence became unbearable. For the first time since Noah's departure, Emily stopped mourning the marriage she had lost. She began mourning the future she had destroyed with her own hands. And somewhere in Boston, without realizing it, Noah unpacked the last cardboard box in his new apartment. He placed a single framed photograph inside a drawer instead of on a shelf. Not because he hated the memory, but because some memories deserved gratitude. Even when they no longer deserved a place in the room. Winter arrived quietly. By early December, Seattle's mornings were wrapped in fog, and the city seemed to move more slowly beneath skies that rarely brightened. Emily had once loved this season. Noah used to insist on buying the tallest Christmas tree they could fit into the townhouse, even if they spent an hour arguing about how to get it through the front door. This year, there was no tree. Only a single wreath hanging on the front door because the homeowners association required holiday decorations. The house no longer felt empty. It felt abandoned. At Hawthorne Media Group, the atmosphere had changed almost overnight. People whispered more often. Meetings ended with executives exchanging unusually serious expressions. Emails marked confidential circulated through departments. Rumors spread faster than facts. Emily first noticed something was wrong when Richard canceled their lunch for the third time in a week. His text was brief. Busy. We'll talk later. No heart emoji. No teasing remark. No promise to make it up to her. Just 2 cold sentences. By Friday morning, the rumors finally gained a name. Apex Dynamics. The same technology company that had hired Noah. The same company whose rapid expansion had surprised nearly everyone in the industry. The same company that had just announced an acquisition of Hawthorne Media Group's digital strategy division. Emily stared at the company-wide email in disbelief. The acquisition would restructure leadership, audit executive practices, and evaluate management performance across every department. Nothing unusual, at least on paper. But inside the office, people knew what restructuring often meant. Someone always lost power. Richard stormed into his office before 9. He slammed the door hard enough that several assistants looked up from their desks. Emily had rarely seen him angry. Confident? Always. Arrogant? Frequently. Angry? Never. She knocked gently. Richard? Come in. He was standing beside the window with his tie loosened. They're bringing in outside compliance officers. What does that mean? It means people with too much time and too many questions. She tried to smile. It could just be routine. He looked at her sharply. You actually believe that? She said nothing. Richard poured himself coffee, though his hand trembled slightly. They'll interview department heads. Okay. They'll review promotion records. Emily felt her stomach tighten. And people who don't know how business works love to mistake loyalty for favoritism. The room became very quiet. For the first time, Richard sounded less like a powerful executive, and more like a man trying to convince himself. Over the following week, compliance investigators occupied an entire conference room on the executive floor. Employees were interviewed individually. Expense reports were reviewed. Travel records were cross-checked. Human resources requested years of archived emails. No one said the word investigation. Everyone thought it. Emily received her interview request on Tuesday afternoon. The email looked harmless. Please meet with corporate compliance at 2:30 p.m. She barely touched her lunch. At exactly 2:30, she entered the conference room. 2 investigators greeted her politely. A woman named Sandra. A man named Michael. Neither smiled much. Sandra began gently. This is a standard review following the acquisition. I understand. We appreciate your cooperation. Emily nodded. For nearly 30 minutes, the questions focused on ordinary business matters. Project timelines. Marketing budgets. Team structures. Then Michael turned one page in his notebook. Miss Carter, could you explain the circumstances surrounding your promotion recommendation last spring? My performance reviews were excellent. They were. Sandra slid a document across the table. We also noticed Mr. Holloway personally overrode 2 other candidates. Emily stared at the paper. I wasn't aware of that. Did Mr. Holloway ever discuss the promotion outside normal business settings? Her heartbeat quickened. What do you mean? Private dinners. Travel. Personal meetings. Emily chose each word carefully. We occasionally discussed work after hours. Sandra watched her quietly. Only work. Emily couldn't answer immediately. Silence lasted only 3 seconds. It felt much longer. When the interview finally ended, Emily walked directly to the restroom. She locked herself inside the nearest stall. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. For months she had convinced herself that she and Richard were simply 2 adults in love. Now strangers with neatly organized folders were describing their relationship using words like conflict of interest, favoritism, ethics, professional misconduct. Their affairs suddenly looked very different under fluorescent office lights. Richard called her that evening. How'd it go? They asked about us. They asked everybody about everybody. They know about the promotion. So. They asked if we spent time together outside work. Richard sighed impatiently. What did you tell them? The truth. There was a pause. What truth? That we had dinners. You should have said they were client meetings. Emily frowned. They weren't. Emily. His voice hardened. Do you understand what's happening? I think so. No, you don't. He lowered his voice. If this turns into an ethics case, they'll destroy careers. Ours. He didn't say the word. He didn't need to. 2 days later, everything changed. Emily arrived at work to find clusters of employees standing near the elevators. Nobody pretended to be working. Phones glowed in nearly every hand. Melissa hurried toward her. Oh my God. What happened? You haven't seen. Melissa handed over her phone. An anonymous social media account specializing in corporate scandals had published photographs. Blurry. Taken from a distance. But recognizable. Richard entering Harbor View Suites. Richard leaving restaurants with different women. Richard embracing someone in a parking garage. Different dates. Different seasons. Different coats. Different women. Emily's eyes stopped on one particular photograph. The woman wasn't her. She wasn't even someone Emily recognized. Below the images, anonymous sources alleged years of inappropriate relationships with employees seeking promotions. Emily's breathing became shallow. No, Melissa whispered. People are saying there were several. Several. The word echoed painfully. Emily had spent months believing she was special. Different. Loved. Instead, she had apparently been another chapter in a story that began long before her. Richard did not come to work. Neither did the chief human resources officer. By afternoon, the executive floor looked deserted. An emergency company-wide meeting was announced. Employees gathered in the auditorium. The interim CEO stepped onto the stage. His expression revealed everything before he spoke. Effective immediately. The room became perfectly still. Mr. Richard Holloway has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of an independent ethics investigation. Gasps rippled through the audience. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. All personnel decisions approved solely through Mr. Holloway's office during the past 3 years will undergo independent review. 3 years. Every promotion. Every salary increase. Every transfer. Including hers. That evening, Emily drove to Richard's condominium without calling first. He opened the door looking exhausted. His television played financial news in the background. Cardboard boxes sat in the hallway. What happened? She asked. They suspended me. I know. They froze my company accounts. I know. She stepped closer. Were there others? Richard looked away. Emily. Were there? Silence. She asked again. Were there? He rubbed both hands across his face. It wasn't what you think. Then tell me what it was. They didn't mean anything. The sentence hit her harder than if he had shouted. They. Not she. They. Emily felt something inside her quietly break. How many? Richard couldn't answer. He didn't deny it. He simply couldn't answer. And that was answer enough. She walked toward the door. Richard called after her. Emily. She stopped. I'm sorry. She laughed through tears. No. She turned slowly. You're sorry you got caught. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time since they had met, Richard Holloway had no speech prepared. No charm. No confidence. No perfect explanation. Only silence. Emily drove aimlessly through Seattle for nearly an hour before parking beside Elliott Bay. Rain tapped softly against the windshield. She remembered another rainy night months earlier. Noah had waited on the couch with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. One for him. One for her. She had chosen Richard that night. And so many nights before it. Not because Noah had stopped loving her, but because she had mistaken attention for love. And ambition for intimacy. Her phone buzzed. An email from Human Resources. Pending the outcome of the ongoing review, your recent promotion and leadership responsibilities will be temporarily suspended. She read the message twice. Then closed her eyes. Her career. Her reputation. Her marriage. The future Richard had promised. Everything was unraveling at once. Not because Noah had exposed her. He never had. The truth had simply reached its own destination. Miles away in Boston, Noah stayed late at Apex Dynamics reviewing product strategy with his new team. Someone congratulated him on another successful acquisition. He thanked them politely. Then walked back to his office overlooking the city lights. He never once asked what had become of Richard. He never searched Emily's name online. Some victories did not need witnesses. And some empires collapsed under the weight of secrets long before anyone heard the sound of them falling. The first snowfall of the season arrived in Boston just before Christmas. It wasn't heavy. Just enough to soften rooftops, quiet the streets, and blur the sharp edges of the city. From the 22nd floor of Apex Dynamics, Noah Whitmore stood beside his office window watching tiny white flakes drift over the Charles River. For the first time in more than a year, silence no longer felt lonely. It felt peaceful. Not because he had forgotten. Because he had finally stopped waiting for the past to explain itself. Seattle looked very different. Gray skies still covered the city, but now Emily noticed something she had ignored for months. People stopped talking when she entered a room. Conversations resumed after she walked away. Not loudly. Never directly. Just quietly enough for her to understand. Office gossip didn't need names. It survived on glances. Monday morning began with another email from Human Resources. Your leadership responsibilities will remain suspended pending the completion of the ethics review. No timeline. No reassurance. No promise. Just another reminder that the career she had worked years to build now existed in limbo. She walked through the marketing department carrying her laptop. A conversation ended abruptly, near the coffee machine. Melissa looked uncomfortable. Another coworker suddenly became fascinated by the printer. Emily poured herself coffee without speaking. As she reached for the sugar packets, she heard a whisper behind her. She was one of them. I heard he promoted 3 women. No, 4. I wonder if she actually earned anything. The words were soft. They didn't need to be louder. Emily placed the untouched cup into the sink and quietly returned to her desk. Humiliation had an unusual quality. It didn't always arrive as public disgrace. Sometimes it appeared as dozens of tiny moments. An invitation that never came. A lunch table with no empty chair. Coworkers avoiding eye contact in hallways. Friends suddenly too busy to return phone calls. Isolation happened gradually. Almost politely. That evening, Emily opened her social media accounts for the first time in weeks. She immediately regretted it. Corporate news articles about Richard's suspension had spread far beyond Seattle. Anonymous users speculated endlessly. Gaze. Some defended him. Most didn't. Several comments mentioned executives and their favorites. No one wrote her name. They didn't have to. Former colleagues had already connected the dots. Emily closed the app. She caught her own reflection in the black screen. I did this. There was no one else left to blame. Meanwhile, Noah's calendar looked completely different. Executive meetings. Product reviews. Hiring interviews. Strategy sessions. The work challenged him. It also healed him. Not because success erased heartbreak. But because purpose gave grief somewhere else to live. One afternoon his assistant knocked gently on the open office door. Your 3 o'clock is here. Zenter in. A young software engineer named Olivia entered carrying a notebook. She looked nervous. I'm sorry if I'm wasting your time. You're not. I've never presented directly to a vice president before. Noah smiled warmly. I hadn't either until recently. She laughed. The tension disappeared immediately. For the next hour they discussed ideas, prototypes, and impossible deadlines. When the meeting ended, Olivia paused at the door. Thank you. For what? You listened. After she left, Noah remained seated for a moment. Months ago, he would have rushed home hoping to share a small moment like that with Emily. Now he simply wrote another note for tomorrow's meeting. Life was moving forward. Quietly. Without asking permission from the past. 2 days before Christmas, Marcus flew to Boston for business. The old friends met at a small Italian restaurant near Beacon Hill. You look different, Marcus observed after they ordered. Older. No. He smiled. Lighter. Noah stirred his coffee. I sleep better. I can tell. They spoke about work, mutual friends, and Seattle. Eventually Marcus became more serious. People back home know about Richard. Noah remained silent. The investigation keeps getting worse. I heard. You heard? Someone mentioned it. Marcus leaned forward. You know what surprises everyone? What? You haven't said a single word. What would I say? Marcus lowered his voice. If you wanted to destroy both of them. He stopped. You probably could. Noah looked out the restaurant window. Snow drifted beneath old street lamps. When I first found out. His voice was calm. I imagined every possible confrontation. And I realized none of them would give me my marriage back. Marcus nodded slowly. They deserve consequences. They're already living with them. You could make it worse. I don't want to. Marcus studied his friend for several long seconds. You're a better man than most. No. Noah smiled sadly. I'm just tired of carrying anger. The day after Christmas, Emily received another unexpected visitor. Her younger sister, Hannah. They hadn't seen each other in nearly 2 months. Hannah walked into the nearly empty townhouse carrying homemade cookies. "You've lost weight." "I haven't been hungry." They sat together in the living room. For a while, neither spoke. Finally Hannah asked quietly, "Is it true?" Emily didn't pretend not to understand. "Yes." Hannah closed her eyes. "I defended you. I know. I told Mom people were exaggerating. I'm sorry. I don't need an apology." She reached across the couch and gently held Emily's hand. "I need my sister back." Emily's composure finally broke. Tears spilled freely down her face. "I don't know who she is anymore." Hannah pulled her into a long embrace. "You made terrible choices. I know. That doesn't mean your life is over. It feels like it." "No." Hannah looked directly into her eyes. "It means the life built on lies is over." The sentence settled deep inside Emily. Painful, honest, necessary. A week later, Human Resources completed another phase of its review. Emily wasn't fired. But she was permanently removed from management consideration until the investigation concluded. Her salary was reduced. Her responsibilities reassigned. She accepted every decision without argument. Not because she agreed with all of it. Because fighting would require pretending she had been treated unfairly. She no longer believed that. That same week, an investigative journalist contacted Noah by email. The subject line read, "Request for comment regarding Hawthorne ethics investigation." The reporter explained that anonymous sources had linked Noah's divorce to Richard Holloway's misconduct. Would he be willing to share his story? It would likely become a nationally read feature about workplace affairs and corporate abuse of power. Marcus would have accepted. Most people probably would have. Noah read the message twice. Then he typed a brief reply. "Thank you for reaching out. I have no comment. I sincerely hope everyone involved is given the opportunity to move forward privately." He clicked send. Then permanently deleted the email thread. Several days later, Emily learned about the article that was never written. A former coworker mentioned it casually. "I heard some reporter wanted Noah to expose everything." Emily looked up immediately. "What happened?" "He refused." "Refused?" "They said he wouldn't talk." Emily stared silently at her desk. Even now. Even after everything. He was still protecting her dignity. Not because she deserved it. Because that was the kind of man he had always been. She remembered the countless ordinary moments she had overlooked. The way Noah always thanked waiters by name. The handwritten birthday cards. The weekends he spent helping neighbors shovel snow without being asked. The quiet kindness that never appeared on social media. Richard had made her feel extraordinary. Noah had simply loved her every day. She hadn't understood which one mattered more until one was gone forever. That evening, Emily drove to a small church she and Noah had visited once during a neighborhood charity event. The sanctuary was nearly empty. She sat alone in the last pew. Not to pray for another chance. She no longer believed she deserved one. She prayed for something much smaller. The courage to become someone who would never again mistake selfishness for happiness. Outside, church bells echoed across the cold Seattle evening. Far away in Boston, Noah walked home after work carrying groceries through gently falling snow. He paused on a bridge overlooking the river. The city lights shimmered across the water. He smiled not because life had become perfect, but because he no longer measured every tomorrow against yesterday. Sometimes healing wasn't dramatic. Sometimes it looked like sleeping through the night. Laughing without guilt. Planning next month instead of replaying last year. And sometimes, healing looked like choosing silence when the world offered you applause for revenge. March arrived with the hesitant promise of spring. In Boston, snowbanks had begun to disappear from sidewalks, replaced by patches of stubborn green pushing through the thawing earth. Cafes reopened their outdoor patios, students filled the streets around the river again, and the city slowly remembered warmth. Noah had lived there for almost 5 months. Long enough to know which bakery made the best sourdough. Long enough to recognize neighbors by name. Long enough to stop checking flights back to Seattle. His apartment no longer looked temporary. Books filled the shelves. Plants rested beside the windows. The framed photograph of his old life remained tucked safely inside a drawer. Not hidden. Simply no longer necessary. Thousands of miles away, Emily stood inside Seattle-Tacoma International Airport clutching a boarding pass she almost threw away 3 separate times. She had rehearsed this trip for weeks. Then postponed it. Then booked it again. She wasn't traveling to win Noah back. At least, that was what she kept telling herself. She only wanted one conversation. One chance to say everything she should have said before silence became permanent. As the airplane lifted above the clouds, Emily stared out the window and whispered, "If he tells me to leave, I'll leave." For the first time in many months, she made herself one promise. She would not ask him for anything he didn't freely choose to give. Boston welcomed her with cool sunshine and a sharp Atlantic breeze. She checked into a modest hotel near Back Bay. Not the luxury suites she had once associated with Richard. Just a clean room with white walls, a small desk, and a window overlooking a narrow street lined with brick buildings. There was something strangely comforting about its simplicity. That evening she walked for nearly an hour before finally stopping outside Apex Dynamics. The glass building reflected the setting sun. Employees streamed through the revolving doors carrying laptops and takeaway coffee. Then she saw him. Noah. He looked almost the same. Almost. His shoulders seemed lighter. His smile came more easily as he laughed with 2 coworkers before they headed in different directions. He wasn't pretending to be happy. He simply was. Emily remained across the street. She couldn't bring herself to call his name. Not yet. The next morning she sent a text. "Emily, I'm in Boston. I know I have no right to ask, but if you're willing, I'd like to talk. Just once." She stared at the screen for nearly 20 minutes. No response. An hour passed. Then another. Finally, her phone vibrated. "Noah, tomorrow. 10 o'clock. Harbor Cafe on Charles Street." "Emily, thank you." No other messages followed. The cafe overlooked the river. Small wooden tables sat beside wide windows, and quiet jazz floated through the room. Noah arrived exactly on time. Emily stood as he approached. For a brief, awkward moment, neither knew whether to shake hands or hug. They did neither. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." He looked healthy. There were new lines near his eyes, but they came from smiling rather than worrying. "You look well," she managed. "I've been doing okay." He gestured toward the empty chair. "Please." They ordered coffee. Neither touched it. Emily broke the silence first. "I wasn't sure you'd come. You asked politely." She nodded. "I almost didn't ask. I know, you know. You've always overthought difficult conversations." For the first time that morning, a tiny smile crossed both their faces. It disappeared almost immediately. "I've imagined this conversation 100 times, Emily admitted. And, in every version, I knew exactly what to say." She laughed quietly through nervousness. "Now I don't remember any of it." Noah looked out the window toward the river. "You don't have to perform." "I'm not. I know." She took a slow breath. "I'm sorry." The words were barely louder than a whisper. "I'm sorry for lying. I'm sorry for betraying you. I'm sorry for making you question yourself when none of it was your fault." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I'm sorry I didn't appreciate the life we already had because I kept chasing one that never existed." Noah listened without interruption. Not once did he look away. When she finished, the silence between them felt different. Not empty. Complete. After a long pause, Noah finally spoke. "When I found out." His voice remained calm. "I spent weeks trying to understand what I had done wrong." Emily lowered her head. "I know. I blamed myself. I know. I thought if I'd worked less." He smiled sadly. "Or planned more vacations. Or noticed your loneliness sooner. Maybe we'd still be together." Emily's tears fell freely now. "Noah." He gently raised one hand. "Please let me finish." She nodded. "Eventually I realized something." "What?" "There are mistakes inside a marriage. And then there are choices outside it." He looked directly into her eyes. "My mistakes belong to us. Your affair belonged to you." Emily closed her eyes. There was nothing to argue with. Nothing to defend. Because he was right. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. "I know. You know, I never doubted that." She looked confused. "If you didn't love me anymore, you would have left honestly." His answer came without hesitation. People who stop loving each other ask for divorces. They don't usually build another relationship in secret. Emily covered her face. I hated myself every day. I believe you. I really do. She slowly lowered her hands. You believe me? Yes. Then why? She couldn't finish. Noah answered anyway. Why can't we start over? A painful silence settled between them. Finally, he spoke. Because love isn't the only thing a marriage needs. She knew what came next before he said it. Trust. He nodded. I still care about you. I probably always will. But every future memory would stand beside an old question. Where are you? Who are you texting? Should I believe this explanation? He looked down at his untouched coffee. I don't want to become that version of myself. Emily wiped away another tear. I don't either. I know. I don't deserve another chance. This isn't about deserving. It's about whether rebuilding is possible. She nodded slowly. And for you? He finished gently. It isn't. For several minutes, neither spoke. Outside, a young couple walked along the river holding hands. Emily watched them disappear around the corner. I used to think forgiveness meant getting everything back. She smiled weakly. I was wrong. Noah looked at her. What do you think it means now? She considered the question carefully. I think it means accepting that the person you hurt doesn't owe you another chapter. He smiled. That's closer. Emily reached into her purse. I brought something. She placed a small envelope on the table. You don't have to open it now. What is it? The house sold last month. He nodded. I know. I found this while packing. He opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph. The two of them stood beside the tiny maple tree they had planted during their first spring in Seattle. On the back, Noah had once written, "Growing things takes patience." He stared at the handwriting for several seconds. Then smiled. I'd forgotten this picture. I hadn't. When the bill arrived, Noah quietly paid for both coffees. Emily noticed. You always did that. You always complained about it. I know. They both laughed softly. For one brief moment, they sounded like the people they used to be. The laughter faded. Neither tried to hold on to it. Some moments were beautiful precisely because they were temporary. They walked outside together. Spring sunlight reflected across the Charles River. At the corner where their paths would separate, Emily stopped. I have one last question. Okay. Can you ever forgive me? Noah looked at the water before answering. I already have. Emily's eyes widened. You have. A long time ago. Then why does this still hurt so much? He smiled with quiet compassion. Because forgiveness heals anger. He paused. It doesn't erase consequences. A tear rolled slowly down Emily's cheek. She nodded. I understand. I think I finally understand. She stepped closer. May I hug you? Noah hesitated for only a heartbeat. Then nodded. Their embrace was gentle. Not romantic. Not hopeful. Simply human. Two people mourning the same marriage for entirely different reasons. When they stepped apart, Noah smiled kindly. I hope you find peace. Emily answered through tears. I hope you never lose yours. Without another word, Noah turned and walked toward the river. Emily watched until he disappeared into the afternoon crowd. She didn't call after him. Didn't ask him to come back. Because love had finally taught her its hardest lesson. Sometimes the kindest goodbye is the one that changes nothing. Spring settled gently over Boston. The trees lining Commonwealth Avenue bloomed again, their branches no longer burdened by snow. Runners filled the paths beside the Charles River before sunrise, children laughed in neighborhood parks, and cafe windows stood open to the fresh morning air. Life had continued. Not because tragedy had become smaller. Because time had quietly taught everyone how to carry it. Nearly a year had passed since Noah had packed the last cardboard box in Seattle. His office at Apex Dynamics now reflected the life he had built rather than the one he had lost. There were photographs from company retreats. Books stacked unevenly on the shelves. A small maple bonsai sitting beside the window, a retirement gift from one of his team members after a successful product launch. When visitors complimented the tree, Noah always smiled. It's a reminder. A reminder of what? They asked. That healthy things grow slowly. He never explained further. He didn't need to. His leadership style had become quietly famous inside the company. New employees often expected another intimidating executive. Instead, they found a man who remembered birthdays, stayed after meetings to answer junior engineers' questions, and thanked interns for catching small mistakes before product launches. One afternoon, Olivia knocked gently on his office door. "Do you have a minute?" "Always." She stepped inside carrying 2 coffee cups. "I got promoted." "I heard." She smiled proudly. "I wanted to thank you. You earned it. You still fought for me." "No." He laughed softly. "I simply made sure people noticed what was already there." She looked around the office. "Can I ask something personal?" "You can ask. You don't have to answer." She hesitated. "People say you turned down several interviews after the Hawthorne investigation." "I did." "Why?" Noah looked out toward the river. "Because telling my story would have made strangers remember the worst day of someone else's life." Olivia frowned slightly. "But she hurt you." "She did. So why protect her?" He remained quiet for several moments. Finally, he answered. "Because my character shouldn't depend on hers." Olivia left the office thinking about that sentence long after the conversation ended. Seattle had also changed. The ethics investigation officially concluded. Richard Holloway resigned before the board released its final report. His professional reputation never recovered. Several civil lawsuits followed. Corporate conferences stopped inviting him. Recruiters stopped calling. People who had once competed for his attention now crossed the street to avoid awkward conversations. The empire he had spent years building collapsed faster than he ever believed possible. Ironically, the downfall Noah had once imagined delivering with anger arrived without Noah lifting a finger. Truth had done the work on its own. Emily no longer worked in the executive offices. After months of reflection, she transferred to a non-profit organization that helped small community businesses improve their digital outreach. The salary was lower. The office was smaller. The work received little public recognition. For the first time in years, that no longer bothered her. She had stopped chasing impressive titles. She had started measuring success differently. One afternoon, a young college intern accidentally deleted an important presentation and burst into tears. "I'm so sorry. I ruined everything." Emily remembered another version of herself. One who believed mistakes could always be hidden. She smiled gently. "No." She sat beside the trembling intern. "We'll fix it together." The young woman looked surprised. "You aren't angry?" Emily shook her head. "People grow faster when someone helps them stand back up." The words felt strangely familiar. Only later did she realize why. Years earlier, Noah had once said almost the same thing to her after she lost a major client account. She had forgotten. He never had. On a warm June afternoon, Emily returned to the old neighborhood in Seattle. The townhouse had new owners. Children's bicycles rested on the front lawn. Flower boxes decorated the windows. The little maple tree they had planted together years before now stretched proudly above the fence. It was taller than the roof. Emily stood across the street for several minutes. She smiled. Not because it no longer hurt. Because some things deserved to keep growing even after the people who planted them had gone separate ways. A little girl ran into the yard chasing a bright red ball. Her father followed, laughing as he scooped her into his arms. The sound carried across the quiet neighborhood. Emily turned away before they noticed her watching. She whispered softly, "Take good care of it." Whether she meant the house or the family inside it. Even she wasn't sure. Later that summer, Noah returned to Seattle for a technology conference. The city looked familiar without feeling like home. After delivering his keynote speech, he declined invitations to expensive dinners and crowded networking events. Instead, he walked alone through the waterfront at sunset. He paused near Pike Place Market, where musicians played acoustic guitars for passing tourists. A familiar voice called his name. "Noah?" He turned. "Hannah." Emily's younger sister. For a moment, both looked genuinely surprised. "It's been a while," Hannah said. "It has." They talked for several minutes. Mostly about ordinary things. Work. The weather. Family. Before they parted, Hannah hesitated. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable." "You won't. Emily is different now." Noah nodded quietly. "I'm glad. She really changed." "I believe you." Hannah looked at him carefully. "She still talks about you." Noah smiled not with longing, but with kindness. "I hope she finds someone who gives her another chance." Hannah asked softly. "And you?" He glanced toward Elliott Bay, where the evening sun shimmered across the water. I already got mine. She looked confused. My second chance. He smiled. It just wasn't another marriage. It was another life. That night, Noah returned to his hotel room overlooking the harbor. Before going to bed, he opened the drawer beside the nightstand. Inside lay the old photograph Emily had given him in Boston. The one of them standing beside the tiny maple tree. He looked at it one final time. Then carefully placed it into an envelope. On the front, he wrote only 3 words. Thank you. The next morning, before leaving Seattle, he stopped beside the waterfront. There, beneath the shade of another maple tree, stood a small public library donation box. He slipped the envelope inside one of the books he had finished reading during the trip. Not because he expected anyone to find it. Not because he wanted Emily to read it. But because gratitude, like forgiveness, sometimes needed a place to rest before letting go. Months later, on an unusually warm autumn afternoon, Emily received a postcard from Hannah. It showed the Boston skyline. On the back was a simple handwritten message. I ran into Noah at a conference. He looked happy. Emily read those 4 words over and over. He looked happy. Not successful. Not wealthy. Not influential. Happy. She smiled through quiet tears. There had been a time when knowing he could live happily without her would have broken her heart. Now. It healed something inside her. Because real love, she finally understood, wished peace even for the person who no longer belonged to you. She folded the postcard carefully and placed it inside the same wooden box that held Noah's farewell letter. The 2 pieces of paper rested together. One had ended a marriage. The other had completed her acceptance. On the first anniversary of his move to Boston, Noah woke before sunrise and walked once again beside the Charles River. The city was still asleep. Golden light slowly spread across the water. He stopped on the same bridge where, months earlier, he had first realized healing was possible. His phone vibrated. A message from Olivia and several members of his team. Happy 1-year anniversary at Apex. Thanks for making this a place where people feel respected. He smiled. Not because of the promotion. Not because of the title. But because respect had become the legacy he was building. Far more valuable than revenge. Far more lasting than victory. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and continued walking. Behind him lay a story shaped by betrayal. Ahead of him stretched a future built on dignity. He never looked back. Not because he had forgotten. But because peace no longer lived behind him. It walked beside him.